Hi, I'm Sarah. I was given Chapter 8 and Ecological Systems and Gender Norms to discuss. The first part of the discussion question says, women's roles in wealthy, industrialized nations tend to be different from women's roles in more traditional, less economically developed contexts. In general, as the economy develops, women's roles become less restrictive. Do you think this is true? So I'm going to be discussing that and how gender norms are connected to economic change, as well as talking about call centers in India. Across most cultures and throughout history, women have always been tasked with taking care of the house and taking care of the kids, and then men worked outside of the home. It seems like in our own country, we started out as a developing nation and we were worrying about our economy and industry, and the women were at home taking care of the family, taking care of the household tasks and things like that. But as the economy began to change and our industry and our economy were, we were a little more developed here in this nation, it became not as sustainable for families to sustain one income. So the women had to go out into the workforce and help support their families. It seems like when a nation is developing, they don't have time to talk about social issues like race, gender, inequality. Not that I'm saying that that's right, but it seems like their main focus is talking about their economy, talking about their industry and things like that. It seems like as a nation becomes a little more stable is when they're willing to talk about social issues like gender, race, inequality, and things like that. So in our own nation, we began talking about gender and gender norms and things like that when our country was a little more established. So a country that's traditional and not as wealthy economically, they're probably a little more obvious in their gender norms and their gender roles. But as the book discusses, just because we have more women out in the workforce doesn't mean that the gender roles and the gender norms have disappeared. They're still very relevant. We have more women out in the workforce now, and we have a little more freedom and inequality. Another point made on page 227 of the book is that in developed, wealthier nations, a lot of the household tasks are a lot simpler now because of advances in technology, but that technology is more expensive, so that forces a lot of families to have two incomes coming in. In the United States, Switzerland, Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and South Korea, more women are in the workforce, which does force the men to take on more household tasks, but the gender norms stay basically the same in that women are still expected to shoulder most of the household and childcare burden. Talking about gender division in the labor force, that's where you really see some of the differences in gender norms. Women often have jobs that have stereotypical gender attributes like being a nurturing job or a caregiving job, or something that involves good verbal and communication skills. So teaching, nursing, caregiving. While men take on the jobs that have that require more strength or assertiveness, things that we consider to be masculine skills, like being a laborer, an executive, something in like police force or military or something like that. If you think about your own life and the people in your life, think about the jobs everyone has. In my own family, most of the women are teachers, and I was always really encouraged to go into teaching. And then a lot of the men in my family are in the Marines or the Army. We do have a couple teachers, male teachers in my family, but the most are in the military. And when I discussed being interested in going into the military, I was told, no, absolutely not. As a woman, you're going to be treated differently. So it's very clear that our gender kind of determines a little bit of what we're encouraged to do in terms of our jobs and what we may choose to do in terms of our jobs. Like I said a little bit ago, women are viewed as having high verbal and interpersonal skills, which makes them good for jobs that require communication and verbal skills like teaching, therapy, social work. And you see a lot of women in those fields. But jobs like politics, business, academia, they also involve those skills, but they aren't you know, the higher tier of those jobs don't have a ton of women in them. It was pointed out that that might be because higher status jobs tend to go to men. We know that one of the big social issues in the United States right now is talking about the income gap, the wage gap between males and females. In 2013, a female full-time worker made only 78 cents for every dollar earned by a man, making the gender wage gap 22%. So it's clear that gender still has a huge impact on the labor force. And I think that the economy definitely, the economy and what type of nation you're in definitely has an impact on gender. Talking about call centers in India, India has the second largest population in the world, and a college-educated woman in India makes 1/5 of what a woman in America makes. U.S. has outsourced a lot of our call center jobs to India, and it's made this booming, thriving economy there. And call center jobs are dominated 60% by women. But India is concerned that we are exploiting their youth in general and women. They're making little money, they have domineering managers, and they work 12-hour shifts. But at the same time, call centers have enabled women in India to have a little bit of a gender revolution. They're working late hours with their male counterparts. They're being given these entry-level jobs out of college to develop their customer service and their communication skills. India has such strict cultural values, and women are staying out late, wearing more Western clothes. Some of them are even smoking, drinking, taking part in things that aren't the norm there. So it's really challenging gender norms in India. So I look forward to hearing your discussions about this topic. Thanks.